everyone, I'm Emma, this is Emma Rose and Books, and today's video is my June wrap-up. Now, I didn't read very much in June. It was a really busy month. I had a whole load of like committee volunteering type stuff that took up a lot of time. I had a few events that kept me really busy. And yeah, and then like kids stuff and work stuff and stuff. So I've been really busy and just not had the time for reading in June. Plus I hit a bit of a reading slump, which I'll explain in a little bit. And I've been listening to loads of podcasts lately. Well, I've been binge listening to My Dad Wrote a Porno, which I kind of think should count in my reading because it's the Belinda Blinked book series. So should that count? I don't know. Basically they did a best of book 4, series 4, like recap about, well, the beginning of the month. And I binge listened to the whole thing the first time, because I think I only found it maybe like 10 months ago or something. And I thought, oh, I just want to re-listen to everything ahead of the next series coming out. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah, if you're into podcasts and if you're over 18, I would definitely recommend My Dad Wrote a Porno if you haven't already found it. I know it's like one of the biggest, maybe even the biggest podcast, but like it's a seriously well-known one. So there's that. Maybe that can count towards my reading because I haven't managed to read any audiobooks because I've been doing the podcast thing. Anyway, so the first book that I read in June was Atonement. Now, I picked this up quite a while ago in a charity shop. Obviously it's a well-known book by Ian McEwan, and I knew about it from that, and I remember the film coming out. But also, when I was a teacher, my form room was in an English classroom, and they had a big display about the book and the film with like beautiful pictures from the film and then quotes from the book and stuff that, you know, I used to read every single day. That display must have been up there for maybe even 18 months. So so I really wanted to know what the actual book was like. Now this book, it starts off in 1935, and there's a character called Bryony, who's a little girl who writes, and she sees her older sister strip off, jump into a fountain in the garden. They live in like a big country house, and this man called Robbie Turner watches her. There's also a whole incident to do with a vase. So like all this stuff happens, Bryony sees it all. Bryony kind of misunderstands what she's seen because she's young, and then the book then fast forwards to the fallout from what happened on that particular day. I can completely see why this book is as popular as it is. It is beautifully written. It's slow in kind of an emotional way. The characterisation is great. Bryony in particular and Cecilia are both wonderfully written characters. The setting is gorgeous. It's thought-provoking. You know, the whole idea of what your actions now can lead to in the future. You know, there were parts of it that I really enjoyed, but in general I just found it hard to get through. And I think there are a few reasons for that. I think firstly, although the writing style is beautiful, I just found it quite hard to get through. I just think maybe it's a writing style that just isn't for me. I don't know because I read lots of quite dense books and I read classics and things like that I'm fine with, but for whatever reason I just found it quite hard to like stay focused on this book. There are also quite big sections that have a war setting, and I've realised recently that I'm not a great lover of books set in wars, no specific wars, but just in general that kind of writing. Obviously it forms a part of a lot of stories because it's dramatic and emotional and all of that, and sometimes I'm fine with it. I think it depends on how it's written. I think it depends on what the focus is. I certainly really struggle if it's actually like manoeuvres based. But I mean, there are books I love that have a wartime setting, like Captain Corelli's Mandolin and like All the Light We Cannot See. There are books where I absolutely love it. But in general, I find that those bits that are set kind of in the battlefield, as it were, I really struggle to stay focused on. I noticed it when I read White Teeth last month? I think it was last month. That as I say, those bits I kind of found hard to get through, and that was the case with this as well. So yeah, I have drawn that conclusion that maybe I have to be a bit wary of books with that setting, because Not because I don't necessarily like them, but just because I just find that a bit of a hard read. I guess it's just not a genre, well, it's not even a genre, like a setting, well, that I am massively into. As I say, again, it depends on the writing. It's a really hard one, but yeah, I think that was part of it, that there were big sections based in World War II, some of those parts I really enjoyed, and other parts I just really had to kind of plough through and wasn't interested in. And I think I felt that kind of the revelations and the major points, I don't know, for some reason I just found them underwhelming. I don't think anything was a massive surprise, and I don't feel like I kind of took much from it. So as I say, although yes, it's a beautiful book, and yes, I completely understand why some people rave about it, and it deserves that. For me, I just I wasn't gripped by it, and I didn't walk away from it really feeling anything. I gave it 3 stars because yes, it's a good book, just as I say, not for me. I know that it's one that might divide opinion a little bit as well because of that, but yeah, it just, you know, that's the way it goes. Not every book is for everybody. So I'm glad I finally read it, but yeah. I'd like to read some more Ian McEwan though, because he does have a lovely writing style, and you know, just because you don't like one book, you know. But because I was really struggling to stay in this, and I kind of wasn't desperate to find out what happened next, that book took me ages to read. So that's why I only read 2 books this month. It's part of it is because that book took me, I don't know, like 2.5 weeks to read, where normally I'm like a book a week or maybe even slightly more. So yeah, never mind. Anyway, so then after that I fancied something a bit lighter, so I bought Good Omens. This is a reread for me, but I haven't read this since I was a teenager. Good Omens is by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. So when I was a teenager, I've talked about this before on this channel, but when I was a teenager I was massively into Terry Pratchett. He was absolutely my favourite writer, and I read everything that he wrote, and then kind of fell out of love with his writing a bit as I got older, because I don't really like his later books as much, and so yeah, just haven't read it as much. But at the time I read Good Omens, and I think I borrowed it off of my dad. I suspect I probably did. And just haven't revisited this one because it wasn't one of the ones that I actually have on my bookcase. Anyway, so Good Omens TV series has just come out as well, which is part of why I wanted to read it, because I want to read it ahead of watching the TV series because I couldn't remember enough about it. Anyway, this book basically is about the lead up to Armageddon. So there's a lot of biblical references, and 2 of the main characters are a demon and an angel that initially meet in the Garden of Eden, and then those kind of carry on through the story. So there are a few characters involved. There's the demon, the angel, there's the Antichrist, there's a witch who has a book of prophecies, there's the 4 bikers of the apocalypse. There's like all these characters coming together, kind of all converging towards Armageddon. This book is one that I very fondly remember as just being the best Terry Pratchett that I ever read. I hadn't at that point read any Neil Gaiman, and I think actually the only Neil Gaiman I've read since then, thinking about it, is a book of short stories, and I definitely have to rectify that because I like Neil Gaiman. I like kind of what I know of his writing, and I like the short stories that I've read of his, and I don't know, I don't think I've read any of his novels. I find that quite shocking, so that's definitely something I need to look at, other than this one of course. So yeah, this was definitely this was my favourite Pratchett, even though it's one that's co-written. So the first thing to say about this book is somehow I managed to get a floppy paperback, which I enjoy very much because it means you don't break the spine, and I just enjoy a floppy paperback. So I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate the format of the book. Anyway, this is such a funny story. The writing is superb because you've got Terry Pratchett's kind of observational humour, but like observational style, alongside the darkness of Neil Gaiman, and those two coming together just makes for something really great. And I think the fact that it's set on Earth as opposed to Discworld like Pratchett's other things, it just adds a certain something. It's very funny, it's very thought-provoking, and cinematic as well, but I often find that with Pratchett's writing you can definitely imagine a dramatisation of it, so I'm glad that that's been made. There are so many characters in this that I really, really like. They all have excellent voices. Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start, really. I love the fact that Death features in this, because obviously that's a character from the Discworld. The fact that Death crops up, which you would hope that Death would in a book about Armageddon, but yeah, so I love that about it. It's just, I don't know, stylistically and in terms of voice and in terms of story and everything, it just really is such a great book for me. And I gave this 4 stars. If you'd have asked me 15 years ago, I would have told you that this was a 5-star read for me. I think it's not a favourite. I like to only give 5 stars to my favourites. It is in terms of it being like nostalgic, but in terms of as a read now, like I loved it, but not quite 5 stars. Maybe like 4.5. But yeah, just it's great. I mean, I feel like so many people will have read this, and I want to do another review, kind of more in depth, once I've seen the series and compare the two. Let me know what you think if you'd like me to make that, or if you've seen the series and what you think. Please do let me know in the comments. Another thing that I did really like about this particular edition that I got is that in the back there are accounts. There's a bit of writing by Neil Gaiman about Terry Pratchett and a bit by Terry Pratchett about Neil Gaiman. And I really liked those because I felt like the authors had so much mutual respect for each other, and I actually learned a little bit about the writing process and the way they regarded each other. And I felt like Neil Gaiman's talking about Terry Pratchett helped me to appreciate Pratchett as a writer even more. I do just think he was so prolific and intelligent and just observant, and it also helped me to understand why it is that I don't like the later books, because it actually talks about how stylistically Terry Pratchett moved away from kind of the more comedy into a more like satirical, so less like about the quips and more into just satire. And yeah, those were the ones that I didn't like so much. So that was interesting too. But it was nice to see the affection that the two writers had for each other. I feel like Pratchett wrote a lot of this. It has his voice so strongly that he either wrote a lot of it or like added his voice to a lot of it in terms of editing, because it just really does have his voice so strongly. I can see Neil Gaiman in it, but I just feel like not strongly. Again, that might be because I just haven't read as much stuff. I definitely need to do that. I definitely need to read American Gods. I'd like to read. I'll put that on my TBR. So anyway, only 2 books this month. Love this, not so much, but I mean they're both really good books, and I would recommend giving either one or both of those a go. Let me know what you've been reading lately. Anything good, anything you'd recommend? Make sure to leave it down in the comments. Please like if you did, and please subscribe for more videos about reading and about writing, and I'll see you all for the next one. Take care, bye!